Thank you. And we go to Article 12. Shall the town raise and appropriate the sum of $30,000 to be added to the previously established Government Building and Maintenance Capital Reserve Fund for the purpose of funding unanticipated failures to aging infrastructure, and to fund this appropriation by authorizing the withdrawal of that sum from the undesignated fund balance? Recommended by the Select Board. Estimated tax impact is 0, and this would be Chairman Hippler.
Move the article as written. Second. All right, so this article, what it does is it injects $30,000 into that fund for unanticipated failures. It covers anything from heating system failures to, right now the board is, I think we're completed on receiving bids, but we're redoing the bathrooms in the town hall, and anything in between. But it covers every town building that we have, including the fire stations, the town offices, the town hall, the safety complex, the library, everything. So the town, in my tenure on the board has always liked to keep around $60,000 in that fund. Again, we've had some unanticipated failures. Everything is aging, and we're down to now $23,629 in that fund. This would, again, move that back up to a pliable number. Everybody knows that nothing is getting less expensive to repair and purchase, and that would, again, there was no tax impact of this because it's coming from undesignated funds from last year's.
Excellent. Tom, from the Finance Committee.
Once again, this is a 7-to-1 vote recommending the article for the Finance Committee. This is somewhat repetitive from what the chair just said, but the town has historically maintained this fund at about $60,000 to use for unanticipated maintenance needs in aging buildings. The fund has $29,000 at the time. This appropriation would restore it to close to the desired level, and the funds would be withdrawn from the undesignated fund balance. The minority opinion felt the fund should remain in the undesignated fund balance for potential use to offset future taxes.
Any further discussion? None being said, the article will go on the ballot as read.
And I'd like to restrict reconsideration.
Excellent. So, Article 13, shall the town raise and appropriate the sum of $500,000 to be added to the previously established Road Reconstruction Capital Reserve Fund for road reconstruction and resurfacing of roads with up to $238,965 anticipated from the State of New Hampshire Highway Block Grant pursuant to RSA 235, and the remaining balance to be raised by taxation. If the town receives the anticipated amount of the highway block grant, the amount to be raised by taxation will be $216,035. If the town receives less than anticipated, the difference will need to be raised by taxation. And if the town receives more than anticipated, less will be raised by taxation. Recommended by the Select Board, the estimated tax impact is 17 cents per thousand, and this goes to Vice Chairman Osborne.
Move the article as read. Second. This article is a yearly appearance on the board, on the warrant. It provides the funding for the primary responsibility of the Highway Department, which is to repair, rebuild, and maintain roads and ensure safe travel. Road improvements and upgrades lead to less maintenance in the future. Roads are the largest infrastructure asset the town owns, and without proper maintenance, costs will be extremely expensive. The balance in the Road Reconstruction Capital Reserve Fund is just under $146,000, which some of that will be used in conjunction with this $500,000 to fully fund that needs for the town.
Finance Committee, Tom?
The Finance Committee supports this Article 8-0. The committee supports it in the interest of sustaining road maintenance programs, allowing the roads to deteriorate to a level where they need complete reconstruction is especially costly. The road reconstruction bond, which passed in 2019, provided a critical boost to the extension of the life of our roads and keeping them in good condition now before they get to the point of needing reconstruction is important. While funding this article has increased in recent years due to higher asphalt costs, the town reduced it from an original $640,000 down to $500,000 in order to reduce the tax impact while pressing for the passage of the proposed operating budget.
Thank you, Tom. Any further discussion on this article?
So again, I just want to say that the initial funding that was requested was $640,000. But again, with the 140 in that account already, we wanted to make sure we spent it all. So still that 640 number that was presented to the CIP and everybody in the select board, that number is still going to be attained with this article.
Go ahead, Dick.
Just a clarification, the bond was for resurfacing and repair of existing roads to get more life out of the roads. This highway block grant, was that specifically being used, for most of it, for constructing new roads?
This block grant specifically for constructing new roads, or the road bond?
No, this one specifically.
This one specifically, yeah. This is in past practice. This has been for complete. Well, it's been for shim overlay again until that bond came along, and it also did complete reconstruction as well.
I thought most of it was for reconstruction or a new road.
That is correct.
Okay, so the majority of it is for new construction.
Go ahead, Tom.
Yeah, I think that the reason that over the last few years this has been increased is to take up the slack for the maintenance to preserve roads as well as the reconstruction. In other words, the bond left off. The bond was for bringing the yellow roads, so to speak, those in the caution area that needed work up to a point where we could extend their lives. And my understanding, and this is sort of from the previous DPW director, was that he was adding to this each year so that there would be money for restoration as well as reconstruction. I may be wrong, but I think that was the theory, and that's why we're seeing it go up each year.
Benjamin Knapp. Yeah, Tom Clow just took, I was going to answer that question. That is true. We had increased it by 25 every year to try to do reconstruction of a certain amount of road and continue the preservation process. So I guess a little disappointed he backed it up. I understand it's very important the budget passes in this town, especially for the highway department, public works, all departments though. But we really made good progress in this article every year. I'm really disappointed you guys cut it back this much. There was over 100 left. There was always over 100 left in that fund every year on purpose in case you got a disaster, which you got on Christmas Eve this year. Did you answer your question for me? Are you guys going to still do the library parking lot this summer?
I'm not exactly sure if we are or not.
'Cause I know there was 40,000 in there also to do the library parking lot, so now highway department has all that damage from that storm. If you do take the parking lot of the Legion Library, Town Hall, that whole area, that's a $40,000. Asphalt increased 30%, but we cut the line, so, and took the money that was meant for roads and bought trucks, so obviously in support always, but I really wished we had kept that up there because We got a good boost for a few years and got the roads up there, but now if we stop and put the brakes on, we're just gonna be back where we were in 6 or 8 years. We're gonna be asking for another $2 million bond, and I don't think anybody really wants to do that again, so, thank you.
Hi, John Lawton, Oak Hill Road. I just want some clarification on this. I thought I understood this, but a question was asked earlier kind of gets me a little confused. This block grant money was stated earlier that it was for new construction. I thought this block grant was for, I guess it could be used for new construction, but it's also used to maintain current roads? Let's say like the dump road. It needs to be resurfaced. Would that money come out of this block grant?
It potentially could.
It would, wouldn't it?
It potentially could, yes.
Potentially could.
Yeah.
Okay.
Depending on what the forecast is of the DPW
Right.
at that point.
So this block grant money is actually, for the most part, used to address roads that are currently in existence. Is that correct? Is that my assumption? Is that correct?
Yeah, it's not meant to make a new road to a new development, et cetera. It's meant to preserve the infrastructure we already have
Okay. That's
in
what I
any shape or form.
Any further discussion on this article? The article will go on the ballot as read.
And I'll restrict reconsideration.
Okay. Article 14, shall the town vote to establish a recreational courts replacement capital reserve fund under the provisions of RSA 35-1 to fund the replacement of the existing tennis courts and create a multi-purpose recreational court facility, and to raise and appropriate the sum of $20,000 to be placed in this fund. Further, to name the Board of Selectmen as agents to expend from said fund. This is recommended by the Board of Selectmen. The estimated tax impact is 2 cents per thousand, and this goes to Selectman Van.
Second it.
As stated in here, this is to create a fund and fund it with $20,000 of taxpayer money for the purpose of basically rebuilding the existing tennis court. It was just recently resurfaced, and that's going to buy another couple of more years, but the asphalt, the underlayment, it's failing. I'd like to recognize Chairperson Janine Lynch from Parks and Rec Commission to speak more towards this.
The tennis courts located behind the library currently stand at 46 years old, and they were resurfaced last year with a grant from the Mildred Hall Fund, and they can no longer at this point be repaired. We've had 2 current vendors, one that was involved in the original construction and one that recently did the resurfacing, that will no longer be able to keep nursing it along. So the $20,000 in this warrant article is to start with a 5-year plan, approximately $180,000 to $200,000 to restore both courts. Fundraising by local clubs and possible state grants could offset the rest of the costs needed. These courts highlight utilization of all ages, but this is a facility that attracts the most use from the over age 55 group. All of our other fields cater mostly to youth. Many other towns are also updating their courts to make it more multi-purpose, with pickleball now being incorporated more and more.
And Finance Committee.
The Finance Committee recommends this article with a vote of 6-2. The town, some of this is repetitive, but this is our language from our rationale. The town has only 2 tennis courts built in 1976, located behind the library. The short-term repair that was made last year to extend the life is probably good for only 3 more years at the most. Parks and Rec notes that there's been an increase in use in the last 2 years because of the growing popularity of pickleball. Funding this year would be the first installment toward engineering and site surveys. The project is not locked into the current location, we understand. The Parks and Rec projects additional requests over the coming 4 years of up to $170,000 through 2027 to complete the planning and construction of replacement courts. It would also be necessary to coordinate this project with library expansion efforts in the future. There was a minority opinion which believes that Parks and Rec should develop a more strategic plan for the town's recreational needs and priorities before going ahead with this project.
Thank you. Any further discussion on this article? None appearing. This article will go on the ballot as read.
And I'll restrict reconsideration.
Okay, and we're just over halfway through numerically and hopefully more than halfway through in real time. Article 15, shall the town vote to establish a Parks and Recreations Facilities Revolving Fund pursuant to RSA 35B2 for the purpose of maintaining, improving, and/or adding to equipment, buildings, and grounds overseen by the Parks and Recreations Commission, and to name the Board of Selectmen as agents of said fund. All revenues received by the Parks and Recreations Facilities and Services to include fees, charges, and other income derived from the activities or services supported by the Parks and Recreation Commission will be deposited into the fund, and the money in the fund shall be allowed to accumulate from year to year and shall not be considered part of the town's general fund balance or surplus. The town treasurer shall have custody of all monies in the fund and shall pay out the same only upon order of the Board of Selectmen, and no further approval is required by the legislative body to expend. Such funds may be expended only for the purpose for which the fund was created. This is recommended by the Board of Selectmen.
Move the question.
And 15, that would be Selectman Van.
Is there a second? Is there a second? Selectman Cahill seconded.
Okay. So as stated, the purpose of this is to create a revolving fund, and the fund would be funded primarily from Chase Park fees and any other fees that Park would get. The intent behind this is the maintenance line for Park is very minimal. I don't have that number in front of me, but it costs more and more to repair, replace, fix damage, whether intentional or unintentional, and it's more and more common that they're exceeding their repair budget, and this is hopefully a fix for that, so it's going to be less on taxpayer impact and more fee usage based. I'd also like to recognize Chairperson Janine Lynch, also from Parks and Rec Commission, to speak more to this article.
The goal of the Park and Recreation Commission is to fund this account with 100% of the funds received from monies collected by Park. For example, Chase Park entrance fees. No additional funds from taxpayers' money is being asked for. The purpose of this fund will be to allow Park to update, repair, replace, maintain, and if necessary, add to all equipment, facilities, and grounds overseen by our commission. As an example, this might include repairing or replacing playground equipment at Bolton Park, like sandbox walls and climbing structures, adding much needed wood chips for the mulch, painting and repairing the irrigation shed at Bolton and Inison, features at the skate park needing repair, picnic tables, gatehouse steps, Red Cross stairs, fencing, all needing work at Chase Park, dugouts at Purington and Inison needing paint and repair, Chase Park and Purington Field requiring drainage adjustments, just to name some of the many projects needing attention. The existing park operating budget will not be altered or eliminated as a result of establishing this fund. The operating budget is currently supporting the running of Chase Park, staff, utilities, supplies, winterizing Chase Park, and irrigation lines at Bolton and Inison, plus spring startup porta potties, dumpsters at each facility, General operating costs like the porta potties and dumpsters continue to rise, forcing us to use other line items like park recreation activities to cover these increases. This revolving fund is needed to cover the long list of repairs needed on aging facilities, unforeseen costs like irrigation system damage, expansion tank replacements, plumbing clogs at Chase Park, unsafe equipment like play windows kicked through at Bolton, and eroding landscape. This fund is not intended for general operating costs. Thank you.
Tom from the Finance Committee.
The Finance Committee supports this article, recommends this article's vote of 7-1. The article will allow Parks and Rec to place all the fees collected into a revolving fund. Currently, fees are collected as town revenue and used to offset the tax rate. Fees, or can be used for that. Fees generally amount to $5,000 to $14,000 annually. The change would allow Parks and Rec to accumulate funds that could then be used for Parks and Rec as authorized by the Board of Selectmen for repairs and expenses. The committee supports the establishment of this fund if it gives Parks and Recreation some flexibility in funding unanticipated expenses such as damage from vandalism. The small loss to the town in revenue, unanticipated expenses, excuse me, I got off track, would have a minimal impact on the tax rate. The minority opinion supported the current process where Parks and Rec go directly to the Board of Selectmen to identify funds.
Thank you, Tom. Bruce?
Bruce Fillmore, Gould Road. I want to commend the selectmen for putting this in here finally. You know, I've been after you for the last half a dozen years or so to do this. This will give Parks and Rec some skin in the game in getting user fees up where they could be to help support their projects. And I hope the town supports it. Thank you.
Thanks, Bruce. Brent?
Brent Dickinson. I hope that if this goes through and that the board is being used basically to administer a fund, that the board would put forth some sort of requirement for surveillance to be put in at Bolton Field. My kids have used that field since we've been in town. We're still using it on weekends if it's good weather. The biggest concern down there is vandalism, and it's happening all the time. With a cheap surveillance system, we could at least get license plates. You can also see who's coming across from the campgrounds during the summer, the people that don't even live here. We need some sort of control on that, or are you just going to keep throwing money after money after money? And it's not going to do anyone any benefit. So, my 2 cents.
Richard Butt, I'm wondering if the board would consider putting a minimum amount that would be allowable to be expended without having to go through the Board of Selectmen. That could take weeks. Some of these things may be an emergency repair, plumbing, et cetera. If the board would consider, after the words Board of Selectmen, to say Town Administrator. Town Administrator is more available and discuss what maybe a minimum amount would be that would be allowable to go through the town administrator, 1,000, 500, or whatever. Just to provide some flexibility and the ability to react quickly. Thanks.
Thank you. Any further discussion on this article? Good, Neil.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Neil Kirk, Mount Dearborn Road. We just heard that this, from the Finance Committee, that this would divert between $5,000 and $14,000 a year from the general fund, which is used to reduce taxes, into the special fund. So why is there not a tax impact down here, since there obviously is one? You can't spend the money twice. Secondly, I suppose that was a rhetorical question, since you're obviously not going to put this on here. Second, can this money be used for tennis courts, to reconstruct tennis courts?
That is one potential possibility, yes.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Dick.
Not directly related to this article, kind of indirectly, but just it's amazing that Finance Committee, I believe for the first time in history, has recommended every article on the warrant. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Yep, go ahead.
John Lawton again. My question on this, in this whole article, there doesn't seem to be a maximum amount that could be in this account. So who knows, we could be saying here 10 years from now, we could have 100,000. Is there some way that, I'm not against this article, I'm just worried that we keep putting money into this fund and it can grow exponentially, to some who knows amount. A lot of the capital reserve funds we've had in the past, or revolving funds, have always had some kind of a limit on them, and I'm just wondering why that wasn't included in this article. If anybody could answer.
There was no reason. This was the language that was provided to us by Park as they requested it.
But is that unreasonable to believe that there should be some kind of a maximum limit that could be on that?
I don't see it as an unreasonable request, but I highly doubt that Park's going to sit on the money. I think the second money lands in there, they're probably going to be spending it with all the amount of repairs they have to do.
Any further discussion on Article 15? It'll go on the ballot as read.
I'd like to restrict reconsideration.
And reconsideration is, they will go on the ballot. Article 16, shall the town raise and appropriate the sum of $10,000 for cemetery improvements and fund this appropriation by authorizing to withdraw said fund from Cemetery Trust Fund's CY Press account, community. What's that?
I
Oh,
move-
Cypre.
I
Okay.
move to accept the Article 16 as read.
Second.
And Article 16, that would be Vice Chairman Osborne.
That's quite all right. So this article is placed on the ballot every year. It's for the maintenance of our town-owned cemeteries, which most of us know we have many of them. The monies are withdrawn from the Cypress account, and there is no impact to the taxpayers. The Cypress account balance as of the third quarter of 2022 is $142,739.40. The only reason we have not received the fourth quarter statement yet, so I cannot update you on the exact balance.
Finance Committee?
Finance Committee recommends this 8-0. And the balance we had for that account was $141,000 in the trust. And so it's more than enough to support this withdrawal.
Any further discussion on Article 16? The article will go on the ballot as read.
I'd like to restrict reconsideration.
Okay. Article 17, shall the town raise and appropriate the sum of $20,000 to allow the Conservation Commission to secure contracted service with licensed forester for forestry services, including plan updates, harvest layout, harvest management, forest inventory, invasive species control, and other related services, and to allow the Conservation Commission to contract or purchase materials or services for maintenance or upkeep of town forests, and fund this appropriation by authorizing the withdrawal of that sum from the town forest account. This is also recommended by the Select Board, and estimated tax impact is zero. Selectman Cahill.
Move to accept Article 17 as read.
Second.
The Conservation Commission proposes this warrant article every year, contracting for professional services to manage and ensure the best use of our town forests. This is funded out of the Town Forest Fund, and there is no impact to the taxpayers. Forest Fund account balance as of December 31st, 2022 was $32,280.10.
Go ahead, Tom.
The Finance Committee recommends this article, 8-0. The committee supports the contracting and professional services to manage and ensure the best use of the town's forests. There's no tax impact, and the account has sufficient funds at about $32,000 to support the contracted services.
Thank you, Tom. Any further discussion on Article 17? Article will go on the ballot as read.
I'd like to restrict reconsideration.
Article 18, shall the town vote to readopt the optional veterans tax credit in accordance with RSA 7228-2 for an annual tax credit on residential property of $500. If adopted, the credit will apply to every resident who is a veteran as defined by RSA 2150 and served not less than 90 days on active service in the Armed Forces of the United States in any qualifying war or armed conflict listed in this section, and continues to serve or was honorably discharged, or any officer who continues to serve or was honorably separated from service, or the spouse of the surviving spouse of such resident, provided that training for active duty by a member of the National Guard or Reserve shall be included as service under this subparagraph. Every resident who is terminated from armed services because of service-connected disability, or the surviving spouse of such resident, and the surviving spouse of any resident who suffered a service-connected death. If approved, the credit granted will be $500, which is the amount previously adopted by the town. This is recommended by the Board of Selectmen, and this, again, is Selectman Cahill.
I move to accept Article 18 as read.
Second.
So Article 18 this year reappears on the ballot, and it is very important to note the most significant change, really the only change, is that we now have 18 and 19. This has been mandated by the New Hampshire Department of Revenue, and basically what it does is it breaks the previous veterans and active veterans into two separate warrant articles. We clearly have voted for this before. We currently have 323 vets that are applicants to this tax credit. It really is, in my opinion, a formality that we go through with this, but we do need to really emphasize that both 18 and 19 have to be voted yes on, and/or it will revert back to the $50 tax credit. Any
May I just
questions?
add one more piece of clarification? The reason every town in the state has to do this year is because there was a statutory amendment that expanded the class of people who were eligible for the credit. So every single town in the state has these two warrant articles, and every single town in the state has to vote to readopt them. And if it fails, you fall back to the $50 credit.
Tom?
I will speak to the two of them together, since they are so...
Article 18 and 19, you mean?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
Have we already done 19?
No, we're still on 18.
Okay, well, this refers to both.
So you can go ahead and speak on both of them, so that when we get to 19, you've already covered that, if you want,
That's fine.
since they are related.
The Finance Committee supports these and recommends them 7-0 with one abstention. The committee supports passing both of these articles in appreciation of the men and women in uniform who have served or are serving our country. A change in the state law now allows members currently serving on active duty to be eligible for the credit. As a result, the state law change, both of these articles must pass in order to continue the $500 annual reduction on the property tax. If both do not pass, the reduction would drop to $50, and veterans, those on active duty, would have to reapply to the town for documentation. The one absentee vote on a committee was because the committee member would directly benefit from this passage of these two articles. Thank you.
Any further discussion on this article?
So both articles have to pass in order to retain the existing veterans credit?
I believe so, yeah. Right.
They're separate credits.
Right.
So one could pass, one could not pass, but if it doesn't pass, like if the optional passes and the all veterans doesn't pass, your all veterans credit goes away for everyone.
Okay. So if the current benefit is for those who served during time of war or conflict, I believe, and this one expands it a little bit.
So again, there's the optionals, the optional tax credit, that applies to people who served in the time of war. There's the all veterans tax credit.
Yeah.
That applies to everyone else. This brings active duty people into the fold.
Right. So if Article 19, I guess that's the,
All veterans?
yeah, all veterans,
Yeah.
doesn't pass, it doesn't affect Article 18,
Correct.
does it?
Correct.
It doesn't, okay. And if it fails, which is hopefully unlikely, and it goes back to 50, then can the town at the next meeting raise it back up to 500?
Sure, of course.
Or higher,
Yeah, up to 750, I think.
preferred. Pardon me?
I think it can go up to 750.
Oh, it can?
I think so.
Well, that's great. Wish I knew that. So, yeah, thanks.
Ken, is there any further discussion on this article? I'm going to ask that Neil, you're sworn in as the assistant. Can you step up just for a second? I want to say something as a resident. So I am one of those veterans that served during wartime, and in general, I want to just say thank you to all of my fellow veterans in here. Thank you for your service. Okay, so with oh, go ahead, Tom.
Since this is the last article that the Finance Committee has any input on, before we move on to petition articles, I would just like to respond to something that was mentioned earlier, and that is the approval of so many warrant articles by the Finance Committee. Two reasons for that. First of all, we looked at the total town and school district expenditures as a totality when we looked at the town budget, the town warrants, articles, and the schools. So we're looking at a total tax package, not just one. The other thing is, certainly as we went through this, you can see the number of times that the Board of Selectmen have used alternative funding to address articles to keep them off the tax roll, so to speak. In other words, to offset the tax impact. So certainly that was a reason for our being behind many of these articles, because we saw it as the proper use of alternative funding. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Any further discussion on this article? The article will go on the ballot as read.
I'd like to restrict reconsideration.
Okay, now Article 19, which is slightly different. Shall the town vote to readopt the all veterans tax credit in accordance with RSA 7228B for an annual tax credit on residential property which shall be equal to the same amount as the standard or optional veterans tax credit voted by the town under RSA 7228. If approved, the credit will be available to any resident who is a veteran, as defined by RSA 2150, and served not less than 90 days on active service in the armed forces of the United States and continues to serve or was honorably discharged, or an officer who continues to serve or was honorably separated from service, or the spouse or surviving spouse of such resident, provided that the training for active duty or state active duty by a member of the National Guard or Reserve shall be included as service under this paragraph, provided, however, that a person is not eligible for and is not receiving a credit under RSA 7228 or RSA 7235. If adopted, the credit granted will be $500, the same amount as the optional veterans tax credit voted by the town under RSA 7228. This is recommended by the Select Board, by the Finance Committee, and this is also Selectman Cahill.
Move to accept Article. I move to accept Article 19 as read.
Second.
I think we've made it quite clear how the state has broken these two articles up, and the importance of us voting for them, readopting them. We currently have 14 vets in the town that fit under this current active article.
So the Finance Committee has already spoken. Is there any further discussion or on this article? Article 19 will go on the ballot as read.
And I'll restrict reconsideration of 19.
Article 20, one of the shorter ones to read here. Shall the town vote to disband the Board of Fire Wards and return control back to the Board of Selectmen? If approved, this change will be effective 1 year from today. And this article goes to Selectman Van.
There we go. Move the article as written.
Is there a second?
Yes.
Selectman Cahill seconded.
Board of Fire Wards recently voted to disband the Board of Fire Wards, or I'm sorry, make a recommendation to disband the Board of Fire Wards. I do have a floor amendment to make. Do I make that now, or do I make that after?
Yep.
Okay. I'm going to propose an amendment to this. The amendment is adding in some language that states, and be governed as described by New Hampshire RSA 154:1, Section I, small b, and this is copy and paste right out of the RSA. A fire chief appointed by the local governing body or by the town or city manager, if any, with firefighters appointed by the local governing body or manager upon recommendation of the fire chief.
Okay. Any further discussion on this article? I'm sorry, on the amendment of the article? Go ahead, Neil.
Neil Kirk, Mount Dearborn Road. Could somebody explain what that just does?
So what that would essentially do is it would keep in line with the hiring practices that the board currently has. So currently, any hiring is done by the Board of Selectmen, whether it's police, whether it's highway, whether it's any other department. This would then also have the firefighters or EMTs or any other first responders fall in line with the hiring practices of that. Does that answer your question, Neil? Okay. I would also like to recognize Chairman Roberts, if he would like to speak.
The board was established, my name is Steve Roberts, Concord Stage Road. The board was established in 1978. The state RSA 154 deals with the organization of fire departments, and so it basically says that the town can establish that control organization and how they want to, but they have to vote for it, and then it be run that way. So in 1978, the current board makeup was proposed. It's a 7-member board consisting of 3 members that are on the fire department, 3 members that are elected at large, and the sitting fire chief. And so things were vastly different in 1978 when that was adopted as far as the makeup of the department. It was much smaller, was I believe a volunteer or at best probably a stipend paid call force. We've moved now into having full-time coverage in the station. We are technically a combination department, which is we have 2 people on duty 24 hours a day, and then they are supported with a call department, and we also have a part-time fire chief and a secretary. And so with a with the complexities of the modern departments where we've taken on EMS, we do EMS billing, and things have moved in a lot of that direction. It's becoming increasingly hard, number one, to keep up with the changes, et cetera, from a volunteer board. And the other thing is that it's hard to avoid conflicts with the members of the department. And so this change is being put forward to move in a more streamlined direction, having the selectmen, as they have authority for hiring the rest of the town departments, and just to make it better in a lot of areas for that. And I'll answer any questions that you have.
Thank you very much. Any further discussion on Article 20?
The amendment. Still, I think we're still.
I'm sorry, on the amendment. On the amendment, still. Okay, so.
So we need to vote on the amendment.
Yeah, so now we need to vote on the amendment. All for the amendment? That's pretty much unanimous. And all opposed? Okay, so the amendment passes. And now voting on, I'm sorry, go ahead. Yeah, any further comment on the article? Go ahead, Tom.
Yeah, Tom Flaherty, Sunrise Lane. I think my comment's still relevant, but about a month ago or so, this article was to remove the fire department members from the board and replace them with residents so that the whole board would be residents. And then just before the deadline, it changed to just disbanding the board. That feels a little hasty to me, like maybe wasn't thought out completely. A lot of change at the last minute, and that kind of thing concerns me a little bit, not being thought out. I understand there's conflict on the board. I actually think conflict can be a good thing, especially in government. Causes some additional thought and deliberation and maybe some compromise. I'll have to admit I'm not familiar with the makings or the recent history of the board. I heard there's a lot of tension and conflict, so I'm not fully aware of all of it. But I am fully aware that things had changed drastically at the last minute. So I'm not sure if I don't really know exactly understand the amendment. So I voted against it. It passed. But those are my comments about this. I just feel like this is all of a sudden coming on us, and I don't know if I can actually propose another amendment to the article as amended. I'd like to propose that then. I have it written on my sheet. Is that okay to hand in? I know it has to be written.
Yes, yep, handwritten, yep. So the amendment would be to add to the wording, shall the town vote to study, can you say that again? I'm sorry. To study disbanding the Board of Fire Wards, not to simply disband, but to study disbanding. So that would be the amendment.
Second. Can I ask a question of the sponsor of the amendment? In that study, what would you look to accomplish, and who would be the people that would study it?
Yeah, that's a good question. I would think that the Board of Selectmen, since the amendment proposes to give them full responsibility for all fire operations, would work with the current board and the chief, since there's a timeline on this for a year, I guess, to figure out what the right change is rather than just blow it up. The selectmen have a lot on their plates. I know the cemetery responsibilities just got steered back to the selectmen since we don't have a sexton anymore in the cemetery committee. So, can the selectmen absorb additional responsibility like that? I mean, I'm sure they can, but do they want to? Does it make sense? I mean, we've had a Board of Fire Wards for quite a while, and I know it's a kind of an older New England thing when you had volunteer forces, but I just don't know that the justification to just completely disband it makes sense. So, I mean, to answer your question, I would think that the selectmen would probably have and maybe a public hearing to ask questions about it. And the selectmen would have a work session with the fire wards and the chief.
Okay, thank you. I just want to make a statement. So, to Tom's point, there was an article on one of the drafts of the warrant that was to change composition. That was brought forward by one member of the Board of Fire Wards. There was discussion had at the Board of Selectmen level to gain a consensus of the Board of Fire Wards as to their direction, as what we like to do on warrant articles is department head, Board of Selectmen, committee members such as Park have their consensus and their push forward for these articles. That wasn't the case with the way that was written. So we asked the Board of Fire Wards to at least discuss it, and this was what the result of their discussion was to disband.
Dick?
I agree with the last speaker. We should step back and evaluate this. In addition to that, we don't have a fire chief. And I think that may be a consideration, hiring a fire chief and determining maybe what his preference would be and his experience in dealing either with the Board of Selectmen or the Board of Fire Wards. Thanks.
Go ahead, Elaine.
Helene Kirk, Mount Dearborn Road. This makes me pretty nervous. I think it was just thrown out in the wind from my perspective. I don't remember reading it in any of the minutes, the discussion about it. I would support Tom's amendment.
I'm speaking as an individual, nothing to do with the Finance Committee. But I would be against the amendment because I sat through the board meetings where this evolved, and as was said, one member of the Board of Fire Wards came forward, and the discussion went something like this. One individual couldn't put an article on the warrant unless it came through as a petition article. Then on last Monday night, the Board of Fire Wards met before the Board of Selectmen on the same evening, and they put forth the article that you have. So it did come from the entire Board of Fire Wards, not just one individual, so it didn't have to be a petition article. So I don't see a conflict there because it was done appropriately. The present Board of Fire Wards agreed with it and put forth this to the selectmen, who then put it on the warrant. So I hate to see it go to study. If there's a reason for it and the Board of Fire Wards agree, then I would say let's move ahead. One other point that came up that I think is important when it was initially put forth by Mr. Roberts, actually, is that because of the changes in the fire department, now some of the members of the board are in fact full-time employees. So you've got kind of conflict of, not necessarily dissension, but when you have full-time employees on a board governing the department, it's different than when it was primarily on-call or per diem people. So I would be against the amendment. I'd like to see it go ahead as printed.
Thank you, Tom. You got somebody right behind you, Neil. Sorry, he'd been waiting.
Jerry Little, Woodbury Road. Mr. Moderator, it's been a while since I've thought about these things, but I seem to recall lawsuits that discuss how we as citizens at deliberative session can change the warrant article as presented, and that we can't do anything that would effectively negate the language. And so if the town council could clarify that for me, because while we're not talking about a dollar value here, we are talking, the change would make timing and whether or not we're actually going to follow through on the language of the warrant article.
You actually can amend an article to negate it. What you can't do is amend an article to eliminate the subject matter. The subject matter remains the composition of, or the organization of the fire department, so the amendment would be fine.
Perfect, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Neil?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Neil Kirk, Mount Dearborn Road. At this amendment, are we talking about the amendment now?
Yes, we're still on the amendment
This
to
amendment
study.
has a very important salutary effect. Our town employees are overburdened now because of all the vacancies. We know that Naomi is working many extra hours to fill in for a whole variety of these things. If we were to go ahead with this amendment, we're putting a greater burden on the Board of Selectmen, which doesn't have the adequate staff available to do current jobs, let alone take on new responsibilities of acting as, in effect, the replacement for the Board of Fire Wards. I think this may or may not be a good idea. I think it's important to study it. But to do it now, to actually implement it now and put an additional burden on the Board of Selectmen is not good management of the town's resources. They're too scarce to accept this additional responsibility. So I think we should be voting in favor of the study of this rather than the implementation. Thank you.
So, again, I'm Steve Roberts, and I'm gonna speak now as an individual, not as a board member. It's ironic that I joined the fire service in 1978, the same time that this was enacted. Doesn't seem like that's so long ago, but I'm sure to some that's ancient history. And I have quite a bit of personal experience in departments that have boards. A lot of departments had boards in past years. Most of them are gone now. I believe there may be us and one other town that currently works with a board. The other one, you cannot be a member of the fire department and be a member of the board. And talking about conflicts, it's not conflicts between individuals of a difference of opinion, but mostly financial. And so, as it's been stated, we've moved away from that volunteer or very small stipend for pay to where we do have people that are making a substantial amount of money when working shifts. And so it makes it hard. The other issue that our current board has is that it's the fire chief appoints, promotes, et cetera, the firefighters and officers. And the board has budgetary control of the department, so I believe it would streamline the process and go with, like I said, the way the town is operating on every other budget. And with my experience in the fire service, I think the time is now. The reason it takes effective 1 year from today, or that would be the day of the vote, is by state law. It requires a change to take place in a year so that that change can be effectively transitioned without operation of the emergency department. Thank you.
Eileen? Good.
Eileen Meany, Quaker Street. I just have a question. I'm assuming that this came from the Board of Fire Wards, and I was wondering if someone could tell me what their vote was in terms of supporting it?
It did come from the Board of Fire Wards, and I forget the total amount, but it was I'm sorry, it's 4-1. There was one no vote.
So 4 in support, 1 opposed?
Of the disbandment, that's
Okay.
correct.
All right,
And there
thank
was
you.
two absent that meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Eileen. Frank?
Frank Campana. I guess I'm a little suspicious of the development to this article leading up to what we see today. I was at that meeting that was referred to earlier, and I may be out of order for the amendment. I'll say I support the amendment.
Okay.
So, but you may put me out of order. I actually wanted to speak to the article, but.
Well,
so
if you have a comment that you support the amendment, then then we
okay.
can vote on the amendment.
Okay, thank you.
And then we'll go back to the article itself.
Okay, thank you. So again, I was at that meeting. It was it was a Tuesday, the 24th, and Mr. Roberts, who has already identified himself and has already been stated that he was there asking the selectmen for not to disband, but to change the composition of the Board of Fire Wards. I don't need to, it was include more people from the public, et cetera, et cetera. So we've gone from a Board of Fire Wards and a fire department, Board of Fire Wards specifically, certainly over most of the tenure of the former fire chief, that they wanted complete and unequivocal independence from the Board of Selectmen. They wanted to do their own budgets, which departments do. They wanted to hire, et cetera, give raises, but it's a fact that they never came to a selectmen's meeting. The only thing the selectmen do is sign a manifest.
Okay.
So they wanted complete independence. Now they wanted.
So Frank, on the amendment, you're saying that you support the amendment?
I do.
Okay. So can we vote on the amendment at this point?
Well, I'd just like to further my reason for supporting the amendment.
Okay.
Okay, so we've gone through an iteration. So, like I say, on the 24th, Mr. Roberts was there looking for a complete change of makeup of the Board of Fire Wards, to today to disbanding it. So I really have to question that there may be some other motive that, we are not being aware of, and I think the amendment would allow for a study. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you for your input. And we can vote now on the amendment to the article, which would be for the town to study disbanding the fire wards. And all in favor? Study? 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. Really? 18? Yep. And all opposed? 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. You're counting all those, you got 20? 21, so it is opposed? Okay. So that article fails. The amendment fails, but the Article 20, any further discussion on the article itself? Notwithstanding, the article will go on the ballot as amended.
As written?
As written with the other amendment.
Okay, thank you.
Right, the
I'll
amendment that
restrict
he...
reconsideration of Article 20 as John amended.
Yes. Okay, thank you. Article 21, to see if the town will vote to pave Orchard Hill Road and Apple Way by petition. This would be Chairman Hippler on this one?
Yeah, this is a petition article, and I'll move it to the warrant as written. Is there a second? Second. Again, the board has no input on this as it's a petition article, but I will recognize interim DPW Director Jason Fisk.
This will definitely set back some of the stuff that we want to do this spring if we end up having to do this stuff. We're not sure on money yet. There's going to be definitely probably some tree work, some gravel work that needs to be done, some drainage work that needs to be done. in order to keep the pavement good as soon as it gets laid down. It's definitely going to add on some man hours to the summer's work, for sure. It's our opinion that we'd like to complete some of the neighborhoods that we've already started before we go on to making any dirt roads pavement.
Go ahead.
Jean Valancourt, Apple Way. I just want to be heard on the fact that we're redoing some roads over and over again. Apple Way has a culvert issue. It was ripped out by a former landowner, and we went all the way back to, I think, Carl Knapp and Bailey to talk about fixing this. Our road is completely washing out constantly. They've moved the apron down. That's a constant hole. So I do think it's something that needs to be on for people to look at, because the road is just ridiculous. It's a continued washout at the corner of Apple Way and Orchard Hill. So, and it's been continuous. I've been there for 27 years, and it's a continuous issue with having that. It's also an issue with people flying down there and getting dirt everywhere. We've got people who are riding their dirt bikes down there, their ATVs. It's a very small road comparably to some of these other ones that you're paving, so.
Also, it should be noted that this is an advisory article. This is not raising or appropriating any money at this time. This is simply considering or studying whether to do this. Go ahead, Tom.
Speaking for myself, I just think that an article of this sort sets a bad precedent. I think that it's up to the Department of Public Works Director, in conjunction with the Board of Selectmen, to set out a plan for reconstruction and repaving of roads. And if something like this passed, and I'm not questioning the need for the work being done, but it could lead to, in the future, a group from any given part of town wants their road redone, so they put it on the warrant. I don't think that's the way to do business. I think that it should go through the Board of Selectmen, the Department of Public Works. They should work together to come up with a priority list. And if these roads are in that bad a shape, work it out in the near future, but not through a warrant article.
Thank you, Tom. Alex?
Alex Manella, Apple Way. I'm not sure if an article is the best way to accomplish this. I live on Apple Way. The road is pretty bad, so I'm really just looking for solutions here. If it's an article, then I'm in support of it, so that's why I'm up here speaking. If there's a better way to do it, I'm open to that as well. So basically, we have the issues that come along with living on a dirt road. A lot of dust. We get dirt bikers and ATVs on the road, which is bizarre. It's a residential neighborhood. Like I said, dust, constant potholes, washouts. It's pretty bad. It seems to be getting worse, maybe. I'm not sure. I haven't been there that long, but it's been pretty bad since I've been there. And it really affects the quality of life for the people who live on the road. Also, we have some larger developments going up around us. There's Cortland Avenue, which are some really nice new homes, and then Duck Pond Road, not too far away also, right? And they have nice developments, nice paved roads, these beautiful stone curbs and stuff. We're not asking for something like that. Just looking for a little pavement to be put down, some blacktop, to make the quality of life a little better for us. And we take pride in our little community. It's not a ton of people living on these two streets. It's just a bunch of us. And we do take pride in living there. And if there's a way to make it better, we'd like to do that. So in my opinion, all right, I'm not an expert in paving or anything, I understand that, but it seems to me like a small project. It's just two small roads in Weare that could really increase the quality of life that we have and also help to beautify the town, in my opinion. Thank you for your time.
If I can address that real quick,
Thanks,
ma'am.
Alex. Yep.
Real quick, just a point of clarification, those developments you mentioned, it's developers that actually pay for it and do all that stuff. It's not the town that does that.
Understood.
Okay,
Thank
just
you.
want to make sure.
Bill Buck, 38 Appleway. What I wanted to point out is that, as been mentioned, that it's, the dirt road, and it's a pretty good grade. So when you get a rainstorm, it washes out pretty badly. So the highway department does a great job. They come down with a grader, maybe once or twice a year, but it doesn't really last long. It's pretty soon, it's washboard, it's got streams going down it, and a lot of potholes and stuff. I'm not sure how much it costs to run a grader down through there all the time, and and it's pretty much a block of ice in the wintertime, and it's a pretty steep grade also. Just point out a few things that could improve. Thanks.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Rhonda Buck here, Bill's wife, 38 Appleway. I just wanted to mention that when I first moved here, I was told that this is the process. I called and spoke with people in the highway department, and they explained that it is clearly a win-win in many ways to pave the road, because it takes a lot more money and time and effort and equipment to keep grading the road versus paving it. Would be plowed once. So I think this neighborhood is about 30 years old. I'm not original buyer. I moved in almost 2 years ago. But the quality of the road has gone down, and there is one end where we actually have to go in a neighbor's driveway to just get around the potholes, and they just keep coming back. So I just want you to rethink that it really is cost-effective for many veterans and elderly, the wear and tear on our backs. There's been ambulances down there. There's no place to turn around. It's not even a circle. It's just a mess, really. So please consider there are many of us from the neighborhood here that came out in the cold, because this is important to us, and this is the process. And so that's why we're here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I have a question regarding this. It's not that I'm for or against this article, but I noticed in the article there's no association with the cost of doing this.
That's correct. This is an advisory article. It's not based on appropriation or granting of any funds from the town at this time.
So if this were to pass, you'd have to come back with a cost estimate, or how's that work?
So if this were to pass, the Department of Public Works would consider it in coming up with its ranking of roads that's going to pave in a given year, and whether or not these should be on that list this year or not. But because there's no money raised, it wouldn't be binding in any way.
Okay, so this is not a mandate necessarily if this passes?
It's a request.
It's a request, okay.
Do we have any other discussion on this article? 21. Oh, go ahead.
How you doing, ladies and gentlemen? I'm Dan Valancourt, Appleway. Hey, the apron's coming off of 114 on Orchard Hill Road.
Sir, can you speak in the mic? I can't hear you.
No. The apron's coming off 114 onto Orchard Hill Road. Both of them are short. You might as well drive a big four-wheel truck to get down that road. And the graders, they come in, they fix it, and 2 weeks later, it's gone. I mean, Randy's not driving the grader anymore. He retired. And the guy that's doing it is doing his best, but, he does his job, it rains, the roads are short again. It'd be cheaper in the long run for the town, to have it paved. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any further discussion on this article? Okay, the article will go on the ballot as written.
A request restrict reconsideration for Article 21.
So we are down to the last two here. Article 22, We, the town of Weare, hereby call upon our state and federal elected representatives to enact carbon pricing legislation to protect New Hampshire from the costs and environmental risks of continued climate inaction. To protect households, we support a carbon-free and dividend approach that charges fossil fuel producers for their carbon pollution and rebates the money collected to all residents on an equal basis. Enacting a carbon cash back program decreases long-term fossil fuel dependence, aids in the economic transition for energy consumers, and keeps local energy dollars in New Hampshire's economy. Carbon cashback has been championed by U.S. economists January 17, 2019 in the Wall Street Journal as the most effective and fair way to deliver rapid reductions in harmful carbon emissions at the scale required for our safety. We expect our representatives to lead in this critical moment for the health and well-being of our citizens and for the protection of New Hampshire's natural resources upon which we all rely. The record of the vote approving this article shall be transmitted by written notice to states, so it would be New Hampshire state legislators, to the governor of New Hampshire, to our congressional delegation, it would be New Hampshire's or Ware's, and to the President of the United States, informing them of the instructions from their constituents by Ware's Select Board within 30 days of this vote, and this is by petition. This is also for Chairman Hippler.
I'll move the article as written. And I'll recognize Elizabeth Evans to speak to it.
Elizabeth Evans, Oak Hill Road, and I'm speaking independent and distinct outside of the Finance Committee. So as we experienced during the holiday season with the power outages here and Weare for significant time periods, climate change is real, and this resolution is an easy way for us to tell our state and federal legislators to act now. Cash-back carbon pricing puts a price on pollution and incentivizes conservation and innovation to place fossil fuels with clean energy solutions. And we can see that with the lack of resources and alternative energies for households, particularly the duopoly that exists between two energy providers in the state, Eversource and Liberty Utilities. This is a fee paid by polluters, not a tax, and all the money collected after administrative costs is rebated to all New Hampshire households on an equal basis. 2/3 of all households will break even or get more than their equal share of all money collected than they pay in higher costs due to the fee. When it happens, the federal bill will replace the state bill and uses border adjustments to push our carbon price around the world. New Hampshire residents want action on climate, and economists around the world agree that this is the approach and is most cost-effective and fair way to reduce climate pollution. This warrant does not commit our town or state to specific legislation, but simply asks our representatives to address this issue and use the cashback carbon pricing to do it. You can learn more on this on the carboncashback.org, and as our moderator had alluded to, this would simply be a study to really look into the details to see what the impacts are and certainly help us live healthier and stronger lives and have the options to run our own budgets versus having those made for us by Wall Street and other fossil fuel providers. And currently, we are expected to pay China and Canada for what we are polluting. So certainly this would go ahead and provide us the dividends and the fee reimbursements that we're already required to pay other economies. Thank you.
Okay, any further discussion on this article?
Brent Dickinson, Dells Way. I don't want my legislators telling me what color trash bag to use, let alone dictate what my tax rate is for something that's bullshit. Pardon my French. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion on this article? Janice?
I'm Janice Matthews, and I live on Woodbury Road. As written, this petition is non-actionable. You can see that there are blanks in it. Passing this would be a waste of time for our Board of Selectmen in town to have to deal with because of the way that it is written and presented here on the article. Thank you.
Thank you.
Alex Manella, Appleway. I second Janice's comments.
Okay. All right. Any further discussion? It will go on as written.
I'll ask that we restrict reconsideration on Article 22.
Okay. We are finally at Article 23, to transact any other business that may legally come before this meeting, and that goes to Neil. You have further business?
Yes, Mr. Moderator, I'd like to congratulate you on your maiden voyage.
Oh, thank you. I'd like to thank all the participants here.
Mr. Moderator, I do have one other topic of business. Oh, and anybody else? No? Okay.
Parker? Mr. Parker?
Mr. Parker?
Kyle Parker, Old Francistown Road. I'd just like to say that as of last night, this meeting was not posted on the town website. I think that was a mistake.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay. As we all know, Selectman Van is not running again. So this board would like to take the time to thank him for his 3 years of service to the town. He moved a lot of progression forward for the police department and also other town entities. So again, round of applause for Selectman John Van.
What's that?
As soon as the vote's done.
So, John, just, the warrant went up after we signed it on Monday. It was on the website. It was posted here at the school. It's in the back of the room. It was posted at the town office. It was not on the front page. It was on the selectmen's page, and the first page said when the first session was and then the second session. So it was posted Monday night once it was signed.
Okay.
Maybe Tuesday morning.
Okay, thank you.
But it was
for-
posted.
Thank you for the
Just not in
clarity.
the public hearing section.
Okay, all right. And I want to thank everyone who participated, from police chief to public works, town moderator, or that's me, town administrator, board of selectmen, town council, and all the residents. Thank you very much. Yeah. Oh, no, okay. I'll call the meeting to end. Thank you.
Thank you.